our presenters, Priscilla Oluoch, Madam Ochanda. Welcome up. Dr. Oyaya. So we are just doing the finishing preparation here to set up the panel. I'm sure it has been a very exciting journey. My name is Kennedy Musumba, those who weren't here yesterday when I was being introduced, from the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Sanitation Division. And I also double up as the East African Community Wash Projects focal point. So I'm sure you've had a very wonderful journey. These 2 days look like a whole week because of the engagements, exchanges that we've had. And so this particular session, I'm sure, is just to, it's a kind of a recap, a summary of what we have had as a discussion, but a focused and pointed summary that is driving us towards, potential points of action, especially to we in government, to be able to have takeaways from this particular symposium. Okay, we can begin. Our guest is here. You'll be joining the high-level panel. So he's already around, so don't worry. So we can begin with the session. Before we begin, maybe just a small self-introduction from each of them, just to remind you who they are. And I know there are people I saw also have arrived today for the first time. So starting on the other extreme end.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Damaris Ochanda. I'm a senior lecturer at Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology. My area is public health, sanitation. I have a lot of interest in sanitation and particularly menstrual hygiene management. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Oluoch from Malindi Water. I'm head of sanitation services. Heavily biased, a lot of experience in water supply and over 20 years. But for the last 2-3 years, venturing into sanitation as our company embraces our sanitation mandate. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Oyaya. I work for the International Development Institute Africa, where we provide research, consulting, and policy thought leadership services across the board. In the sector, I've been involved in being part of the policy development and legislative processes on matters sanitation for the last 8 years. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so there are just 3 of them, but they are going to pack in all that we have covered from different panels, but we've clustered their subject matter so that they are able to focus on those particular ones. Each one of them has a cluster of subject matters to cover. So I would like to invite Madam Ochanda to give us what is it that we engaged in that we can actually put on white paper from this particular symposium. I guess your topics are gender and vulnerability and youth. All right. So I think from where you are, we just want to make it user-friendly for everybody. Just from where you are, what is it that the symposium picked up that we can follow up as people from government?
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm supposed to report on 2 sessions. One, sanitation and vulnerability, and then sanitation, youth, and gender. I will start by saying from those discussions, when you look at the vulnerable groups, there are several groups that came out that we need to address their needs when we are looking at sanitation. One, people with disabilities. 2, we have children. And among children, we have the preschool children. When you go to primary schools, you will find some of the schools have the preschoolers, the ones in baby class, PP1, PP2. So the preschool children, and then we have children in primary schools. So in that context, you look at both boys and girls. Then we also have children who are in institutions. For example, we have children in correctional institutions, we have children in orphanages, and then we also have, under the vulnerable, we were also able to pick another category, the street families. And among the street families, we also have children. Now, going to the people who live with disabilities, it is important to note that many of these people are actually unserved or underserved when it comes to provision of sanitation services. And one of the key issues that we need to look at when addressing their sanitation needs is the issue of accessibility. Can they be able to access, for example, the toilet or the washroom? And when we look at the issue of accessibility, the physical environment, the space, the ability even to be able to access the service as everybody else. And one of the things that was pointed out with regard to accessibility, for example, some of the toilets do not have a provision for people with disabilities, so they are not able to use it comfortably. And for those who are able to use it, you may find that the hand washing points have actually been put high up. So how do we address this? The ideal situation in terms of people with disabilities, and I'm talking generally about, for example, the public toilets, but it also came out from the group that it is even worse for people with disabilities in the informal areas. How do we provide sanitation services for these people in those particular informal areas? What is the ideal situation? One, when we are putting up sanitation facilities to address the needs of the people with disabilities, this should actually conform with standards for built environments. We were informed that there are standards that are actually ISO certified, that anyone who is putting up a building that would be accessed by a person who has disabilities should be able to follow. So that we even have handrails that they can be able to support themselves with. And generally, when we are providing sanitation services for people with disabilities, we need to ensure provision of a dignified facility that also provides privacy. There is need of including people with disability across the sanitation service chain, even during the conceptualization of the services that you want to provide. You need to engage them because they are the ones who know where their needs, which needs they have that needs to be addressed. So engagement is very important. And then there's need of collaboration between the different players in the sector to ensure that we, for example, the players need to know that we have standards that we need to use when you're putting up sanitation facilities to address the needs of the people with disabilities. So there's need for collaboration for all who are in this sanitation space.
Madam Ochanda, I'll just stop you briefly. Information that we have just received, sorry about this, is that our guests, the PS, would like to listen to this presentation. You wouldn't want to be just on the high-level panel. Would like to listen to this presentation. So we are flipping over the program so that this will be done when the PS is there. So I hope, Madam, I hope I haven't interfered with your flow of thought. But I think you are from the education sector, you are very adaptable. So maybe just as a warm-up, as we wait for the next instruction, I just want to know people who are from the CBOs. Are there people? Raise up your hand if you are from CBO. If you are from a community-based organization. Do we have, beautiful, beautiful. There you are. People from water service, I wanted to end with that. Water service provider, water sanitation, rather, water and sanitation companies. Raise up your hands. Beautiful, beautiful. People from the health sector, Ministry of Health, public health officers, agencies from the health sector. Raise up your hand, please. Can I see a hand? I saw them yesterday in the morning. Okay. Now, where are the rest belonging to? Who have I left out? Shout your wherever category. Private sector. I can see private sector there. Asante sana. Wapi wengine? Nimewacha nani? Water sector trust fund. Yeah, you're not for water service provider. Water sector trust fund. Thank you very much. Wale ambao wako beyond the water companies, oversighters, WASPA. Mko hapa? Ama muliinua mkono wakati ya nini? Consultants? People who are consultancies? Niliona watu kawaida hapo. Asante. Nani nimewacha nje? NGOs, non-government organizations. Raise up your hands. You know they are cross-cutting. Naona watu wame-raise mara tatu. That's good. They are multitaskers in this industry, in this enterprise of WASH. Anybody else I've left out? I just wanted to have a feel of the atmosphere. National government? National government? Okay. Haya. Hawa wengine our hosts watatuambia baadaye, sitaki kuwa introduce saa hii. Asante sana kwa nyote for having participated here. So I want to hand over to our MC so that he can tell us the developments.
Asante sana Ken, and of course we'll lead you back, and to our panelists, I think poleni kwa hiyo interruption. I will ask you to just take back your seats, but you'll be coming back. And that's what makes us unique. As human beings, we are flexible, we are creative, we can adjust with the situation. But it doesn't mean that we are going to stay here looking at each other. What we are going to do is flip the program. Because I think, yesterday when the Vice Chancellor was giving his speech, he said, we need to identify the cat, isn't it? And since I think the person who has said we wait, he has some description of the cat, isn't it? And since the panel members here, they heard the bell, we want now to task them to put that bell, isn't it? To bell the cat, right? So what we are going to do is that we are going to go straight to the high-level panel discussion that was supposed to take place
Dr. Letangula. You don't have to.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you so much. Maybe I may make this correction. My name is Leonard Makoha. I'm the Deputy Director Research at Kenya Water Institute, representing Dr. Leuro Letangula. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Makoha. Next.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Margaret Maina, Managing Director for the Emuru Water and Sewerage Company.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want also to make a correction. My name is not Kenya. My name is Engineer Daniel Nganga, Managing Director of Murang'a Water Company, and I'm also the Emeritus Chairman of Water Service Providers Association of Kenya. And we have worked very closely with the PS when he was working for the water companies and when he was Minister for Water in Nakuru. So when I see him, I see a colleague.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Irene Gunjiri. I am the director of the Strathmore University Water Governance and Innovation Hub, and also a faculty in the Institute of Public Policy and Governance at Strathmore. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annabelle Waitito, working for Big Five Africa, a private company, and we are dealing a lot with water, quite a bit of water financing, gender, and governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And we will begin with Dr. Makoha. For the past 2 days, we have been here, and we've been having discussions around safely managed fecal waste treatment. And from the discussions we've had, it has been indicated that it's quite costly and expensive, and there is a need for affordable, robust, and highly flexible treatment technologies with very good efficiency in terms of fecal waste management. So kindly tell us, how are institutions such as KEWI working towards affordable wastewater and fecal waste treatment technologies?
Thank you so much. Let me talk about what we are able to do as KEWI. First, KEWI is a training institution, training in diploma, certificate, and artisan programs, and we are mostly for the water sector. As towards this program here, currently we have programs under wastewater management at diploma level and also sanitation. We also train plumbers who contribute immensely towards this. What we have done directly towards safe and low-cost pit latrines, we have a project under this where we're trying to address capacities in the communities which are underserved. We have a program where we are implementing SATO toilets. These, we believe, are cheaper technologies, and to sustain them, we also believe that there is need to make them be managed by the communities themselves. So we are implementing these SATO trainings in Kajiado, Kitui, Kisumu, and also Tharaka Nithi. This is a project which is supposed to cover 250 youth and women, whom we believe will then scale it up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just pick it from there, where you have talked about, programs that support the underserved and specifically targeting the youth and the women. So to Margaret Maina, we know that gender disparities are still prevalent in terms of access to water and sanitation services, which disproportionately affects women in low and middle income countries. In many places, poor sanitation practices place significant barriers on women, making it challenging for them to access basic needs such as water, sanitation, and hygiene. Could you please highlight to us some of the impacts of poor sanitation on women and what can be done to address these issues?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it is true that women in low and middle-income countries carry the burden of poor sanitation, and that one is done at different levels. First, women and youth, especially in the low-income countries, are the ones who are mostly affected, starting from the young girls, where in schools they don't have enough toilets for girls and enough toilets for boys. When the women graduate to college level, you find that there are no facilities specifically for women, especially for their MHM management. And when we come now to the household levels, the women are the ones who will know and who are affected by unsafe sanitation because they carry the disease burden, which is occasioned by this. So there are many areas that women also need to be, the life of women and youth need to be checked. In institutions, like yesterday we had in prisons, how is the sanitation there for women and the youth and the children who are also with their mothers? Also in our institutions of learning, even in our workplaces. Like for us in the technical sector, when you go to the offices, we found that there are no toilets for ladies. We are all going to toilets where there are urinals. There are no MHM facilities. So these are the issues that are affecting women in the low-income areas. And there is need to give them specific attention because they are the ones who are affected most. It also impacts them negatively when they have to attend to the burdens, to their families. They are not going to do their jobs properly. So it is significant that these issues, they are addressed, and they can only be addressed when women are recognized as major stakeholders, where all the decisions which are being made with a woman lens. So I am happy that this discussion will give us some way of how we are going to do it. And also the innovations that are come, they have not even been tested with women. Is it what the women need? Putting also into consideration the socio-cultural issues for women, where in some cases women are not able to share their toilets with their father-in-laws or something. So you can see the women will always carry that tag behind their backs. And it is important they are involved in all aspects because they are the only ones who know how they are affected by unsafe sanitation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for highlighting the importance of sanitation, especially to women. As a country, if we are to sustain the efforts that we have already made in terms of access to sanitation, one important aspect is increasing the capacity of the service providers to ensure sustained access to sanitation within the country. Dr. Irene Ngujiri, kindly speak to us on the role of the universities in filling the capacity gap in water and sanitation utilities towards universal provision of sanitation services.
Thank you very much. I think our traditional understanding of university for the longest has been that universities provide education. And when we talk about education, it's good to remember that education has two components. So the first component is the technical. That means training on, the processes and what needs to happen. And that basically targets the head or the intellect. The second aspect is values. And that targets more the other aspect of the person, which is which is the heart. Yeah. And so when talking about education, it's important to know that when thinking about universities, it's not just about the technical of how to fix a pipe, but also to think about the one fixing the pipe, yeah, so the decision maker. And that said, I think when we think about universities, we know that as social institutions, universities form the infrastructure for change. Yeah, so if you want any change to happen in society, it has to be through a process of education where you bring in new knowledge and educate the people on how they can be more creative in solving decisions, in solving problems, also thinking about designing innovations, and also the economic mechanisms and market models that are available. Next is to thinking about the values, is to think about behavior change, yeah? And behavior change is providing education that will lead people to make conscious choices. And through higher education or through university education, we can have an integration of values and technologies. Yeah. So you put values as well as the processes together to get a wholesome individual who can then work for the water service providers. And we know at the end of the day, and I think it has been repeated, the water crisis and as well as the sanitation crisis are not crises of availability. They are more crises of governance. And so when we talk about governance, it means that we are looking at the individual decision maker. Yeah, and that in my view is one of the ways of that a big field for universities to play, building personal and organizational integrity, as well as providing the technical aspect. The next thing about universities is research, yeah, so that the decisions that are made are evidence-based. Yeah, so there is a big area there for universities to get into generating new knowledge in technologies, and I think Kewi has brought it up very succinctly, and that is part of it. But then, how would you get into the area of research? I think for me it's very clear that universities cannot play this role on their own, and so there needs to be partnerships, yeah, public-private academia partnerships. In other words, there is an old principle that has been there for a very long time called the triple helix concept. Yeah, the triple helix concept then looks at how innovations come about because of interactions between academia, industry, and governments. Yeah, and that is how to foster economic and social development. A very good example of how the triple helix has worked is actually the Silicon Valley. Yeah, and we wonder how is it that the Silicon Valley managed to get to that point? Because we had government giving free land, we had industry that was in need of innovations to solve specific market demand, and then we had academia that had the brains, yeah, to come up with these innovations. And then put the three together and you have a formidable force for innovations. Yeah. So for me, I see academia and universities looking at first capacity building and teaching, and then secondly is research. But we cannot have research on its own. It has to be through partnerships with other institutions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Irene. And key highlights from the points that she has just mentioned is that education is not only about the technical aspect, but the values and the importance of research and development. So, Engineer Daniel, we have less than 10 years to 2030. And that means that as a country, we need to act fast to leverage on the emerging innovative technological solutions to achieve our goals on sanitation and hygiene, all tied to SDG 6. And there are quite a number of innovations addressing both rural and urban sanitation aspects. It's therefore necessary to invest in and develop human digital capital in the context of water and sanitation. So how can water and sanitation providers build the capacity to apply new technologies to enhance decision-making about sanitation services, thereby accelerating the provision of universal sanitation services?
Thank you very much. I think what we have done as a country, when water was devolved and formed water service providers, our forefathers who ran utilities formed an association called WASPA, Water Service Providers Association. That is where we share our knowledge. That is where we domicile our innovation. That is where we do benchmarking. We also do analysis of performance, not only for water, but for sanitation and sewerage, for the purposes of not competing with WASREB, because WASREB ranks us and they have their data, but for purposes of competing with each other and peer learning. That is one of the issues that we do as water service providers in the Republic of Kenya. We have also seen an innovation that has happened in some parts of the country. There are people who are producing briquettes, I think that is Nakuru, from shit. The others who have come up with biogas. I think in Murang'a, I think it will be the first public project in the Republic of Kenya. We are conceiving a project to produce biogas from our sewerage treatment works with the support of Murang'a University, because we found that there is a niche. We balance the industry and academia for the purposes of accelerating sanitation. The initial study has shown when we get the gas, of course when you go to a sewerage treatment works, you will feel a smell. That smell you feel is as a result of hydrogen sulfide. You just dispose it safely. The rest is biogas. You condense it in a can and sell. The studies have shown that that gas will be cheaper than HP gas by 50%. That is a true bottom-up economic model for our Kenya Kwanza government that we support a lot. And we must ensure that we support people at the bottom of the pyramid. Something else that we have done, as Murang'a Water, we formed a SACCO called, and it's domiciled in Murang'a, but has support all over the country, called Majcare SACCO. We have started a project of supporting women in the rural areas to improve on decentralized sanitation. You improve a pit latrine by ensuring that you improve it, looks like a flushing unit. That unit is costing about 1,500. We are lending that to our members, rural women in Murang'a. You know, 1,500 in most remote areas, and the people who are at the bottom is very difficult to, so that you can pay that within 1 year. Basically, that is what we are doing as an innovation. And we'll be presenting this in the conference that is coming in Mombasa. That is June 23rd by WASPA. And I would call upon everyone who is here to come down there so that you're able to learn from us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Engineer. And lastly, to Annabella. We know that water and sanitation are merit goods, and their provision will continue to depend a lot on some extent of public funding. And moreover, wash services have significant social benefits in terms of, health, environment, gender, and thus there are very good reasons for government to fund or subsidize these services where needed. And that is where the challenge lies, to make public funding available for for the services and populations in need, while at the same time encouraging efficient universal service delivery. So given that public funding, whether through taxes or transfers, is not sustainable source of finance for fecal sludge management, what, in your view, is the solution for the financial gap experienced in this area?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I think it is an interesting subject to be talking about financing, because we have talked about financing for a pretty long time. And traditionally, we know that sanitation and water financing should actually come from the government, donors, but then again, thinking about tariffs and thinking about the taxes. But over time, we have noted and we realize that this is actually not going to be adequate. So we need to think a bit more innovatively. I remember that one of the reports on financing the water sector said that the dream of achieving the SDG is possible, but that would require that we think a little bit more innovatively and radically move towards other sources of financing. So what I have seen in this water sector is a number of innovations that are coming up in the sector. And I think we have seen that towards meeting the SDG, there are many things that have been tried and that are being attempted. What has worked in the West is establishment of sector financing facilities. While we have a government facility, and that is the Water Sector Trust Fund, other facilities have come up, and I think this is why we see facilities like KIFWA, Kenya Innovative Financing for Water, which is also being tried, and basically looking at de-risking startups for water and sanitation. But we also have seen Kenya Pooled Water Fund, which is within the KIFWA. But we have also looked and seen that there are quite a number of other models of bringing in the private sector. And I think we have seen in Naivasha and in Malindi this model of build, operate, and transfer. And I think it is also working. And it is one way of bringing resources into the sector. And we've also seen, quite a bit of an attempt to see how to bring about green funds and credit, carbon credits. And I know that with one of our partners who works with us as Big Five Africa, we worked with Women Organizing for Change in Agriculture and Natural Resource Management. I'm one of their associates in this region. And we are looking at how we can be able to use green credits to finance, not just adaptation. The fact that I work in the water sector, I'm trying to push for water. And basically, we know that it has worked in another country where they're financing the O&M for water, through green credits. And so we think that this is one of the biggest areas. WOCAN has also established a standard, which is first women-specific standard that measures women empowerment, and they're looking at 6 domains, and that is 6 domains that empower women, so that we can be able to issue or offset credits against those domains. So one of the things that basically we have been able to do to ensure that we can probably increase financing in the sector, as Big Five Africa, we have actually been supporting financial institutions through training and capacity building, because if you look at the sector, there has been a lot of mistrust between the water companies, but also with the banking institutions. And one of the things that we have been able to do very effectively is to train the water sector. Last year, we worked and supported the National Bank, and we cooperated with WASPA and cooperated with also WASREB, and we trained 250 staff members of NBK on water financing, just helping them to understand the sector, and basically just to help them to understand that the sector is not as risky as they perceive. And so we've seen that that is one way of really enabling the water sector. But we know that in the water sector, it is not going to be possible to create enough confidence among the private sector groups and institutions without thinking about how we de-risk the water sector. And so one of the things basically that is going to be important in this sense is the need to continue to talk about the importance and the critical role that the government subsidy plays in attracting the private sector, but also looking at the role of credit enhancements. And I know that the water service, the Water Sector Trust Fund has some credit enhancements like OBA and AOD, which basically enables, the private companies or institutions like financial institutions to have the confidence because it acts as a guarantee. But we also know that the other guarantees that come from some of the donors, like I know USAID has had quite a number of guarantees, but we know that there is also an increased number of guarantees in the sector. So basically what we need to see more is, to increase financing in the sector is clearly defined investments. One of the gaps that we have found working with the water utilities and also with the banks is that sometimes there are no clearly defined investments. And so one of the things that we have been doing to support the water companies is basically to support the process of developing bankable projects and that are commercially viable, but also socially viable. I know yesterday there was a question about the dead stock, and someone asked, why do we have all these many projects that are dead? And I think it is because they are not clearly defined in such a way that we can be able to ensure that, that they deliver services to the people. So we have so many projects, but because they cannot deliver services to the people, they're not socially viable, and so they're not able to bring back the investment or the income. So revenue is not being collected. So for me, I would say that we need a bit of work, basically, for us to ensure that we have bankable proposals. There is training and capacity building to make sure that we are also able to demystify this sector and create confidence. But again, we also need to ensure that there are credit enhancements to enable the private sector to effectively participate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Annabelle, for that. At this point in time, I'll open it up to the plenary for 1 or 2 questions to the panelists, if any. Question or comment? Yeah. Clearly, I heard, any? Oh, there, we have 1 and 2. At the front. There, and then and there's a gentleman at the back. Okay, yes, please.
Okay, a very good afternoon. My name is Caroline Kwamboka. I am a director at African Renaissance. We work to advance health equity, gender equality, and socio-economic justice. And African Renaissance supports African Union as an institution, the Women and Gender Directorate, together with its constituent organs to advance these interests. I really want to commend the panel that is before us, and my question or comment really goes to the team that, to Madam Margaret and to the professor from the Strathmore University. And it really is in the area of, how can we strengthen the mainstreaming of strategies that can enable us reach those who are vulnerable, marginalized, those who are excluded for whatever reason, whether it's by education, by location, by poverty status or any other social stratifiers, because we know this is the group in our population that is most disadvantaged and least represented when it comes to policy and to interventions, even in forums like this. So interested to just get a little more views on how we can accelerate mainstreaming and ensure that these excluded, marginalized populations, particularly women and girls, are benefiting from this amazing conversation we have had for the last 2 days. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We can get the next question, and then the panelists will respond.
Thank you so much, the panelists who have just shared with us this afternoon. Mine goes to, is it Makoha of Kewi? Yes. I think the idea of, I didn't get the correct pronunciation. Did you say the stock toilets?
Sato.
Yes, 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 those ones. Now, you have mentioned a few counties where you are doing the piloting. I want to ask whether they can be cascaded, because you have only selected a few. So I didn't introduce myself. I'm Reverend Johnston Nyongesa from the Anglican Development Services, which is the development arm of the Anglican Church, Western. A lot of development with very vulnerable communities in Western. So it's a good idea. I want you to find a way of how you can cascade to the others. And then our panelists who talked about the green credit, it's also a good idea. And we would also would love to see the same idea being cascaded all over, so that those who are engaged in sanitation and fecal management can also see how they can link the two with the green credit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Margaret, would you address? Oh, there is another. Okay, please go. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Sorry for that.
It's okay.
My name is Rachel. I am a student here at Strathmore University, a third-year student at the Financial Services. So my question goes to the whole panel, and the main theme we're talking about right now is sanitation and hygiene, right? Now, my question isn't majorly on water, but it's something related to it. And it entails on that. In the market, there is this product that has been there. It's not a new one, though it's also not an old one, where we have reusable sanitary towels. I know we have all heard of that. And my question is, what's your point of view on the matter? Do you think that, as we're talking about hygiene on this date, do you think this specific product is to be encouraged to be retained in the market, and is it convenient and quite as useful as it's said to be? Because when we look at the product being reusable and recyclable, we know there are factors such as its capability of harboring bacteria and whatnot. So kindly share your views on the matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Patrick Alube. Mine is very short, and it's more on the financing. I've heard what Madam has said, and speaking about KIFWA, speaking about Kenya Pooled. That is what she's brought about. But then just wondering about the last mile connectivity, what we are doing about the last mile connectivity. I'm seeing WSPs are there, And I would also just want to ask, that the last mile connectivity, we've done sewerage in so many other places, and how is that connectivity going on? And that is something that if we really want to improve sanitation in this country, it is something that we really have to look into. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So we have 4 questions, and I'll request Margaret to address the first one on accelerating the mainstreaming of strategies to respond to challenges affecting the marginalized populations.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Caro, for that question. It is true that the marginalized, the vulnerable, the women, the ones living in the low-income areas are the ones who are affected by the unsafe sanitation. And it is true, there have been many issues that have been geared towards sanitation. I remember from when I was a small girl, it was a different challenge that time. I don't know if my mom, there were no toilets, maybe during my mom's there were few. By the time I was growing up, there was the women, the community health workers who were going around the villages, inspecting villages to make sure there were toilets. And those who didn't have toilets were given ultimatums to do that. We have now evolved, we have grown. The toilet became VIP, then VVIP. Now we have sewer networks, and we have now the other on-site sanitation issues. But the truth of the matter is, the sheet will still remain a product, and the toilet will always be. And by the way, maybe my generations, my daughter will start talking about it, and her children will start talking the same toilet. So, when we are talking about the vulnerable, and what are we doing about it, it is very interesting that the people who are supposed to be, who are vulnerable, they never had an opportunity of discussing what they need. We sit in conferences, we think about a toilet, a squatting one, a sitting one, a standing one. But the real people we are talking about, we just take products to them. And that is why sometimes you hear there is a stored project, because the people who really need this toilet, right now when we are talking about toilet, there are people who are using the squatting toilet. There is the elderly who cannot use the squatting one because of the issues of age and whatever. But if we start talking this from the grassroots, I've started from the Mama Afya wa zamani, because that person was going to the village and discussing the needs of those people, what they need. But now, sometimes the solutions that we're giving to the people, they are not even understanding what we are talking about. This woman in Korogosho, who is using a manual pit emptier to come and empty her toilet. She can afford only, I was saying yesterday, she scoops the toilet by amount of money she can afford. So if we are telling her her budget, as she puts her budget for food, she must also take the budget for the toilet. But she'll never come here to be heard what she needs. There are these young girls, because I'm answering this, because of the reusable pads. There are children who don't go to school, the girls, during their menstrual periods. And they use whatever is nearest to her. Some they use mattresses, others old clothes. It is not about the issue of bacteria. They don't even know about bacteria. Because for her at that time, it is for her to take care of her need of the moment. So, Carol, we have a long way to go. We have to rethink the users, the sustainability of the solutions that we are bringing. We have to think, I was once embarrassed when we went to Dar es Salaam and we were talking about a urine-free or dry toilet, and it had been constructed in a home, and I was with my bunch of men, and I wanted to know how it is used. I wanted to understand of urine and the feces. Sorry, men have their urinals, so they know how they can separate, but women, we don't know. So when I was trying to demonstrate, to see how they do it, And I was asking the men, they left. And I didn't know why they left. But then when I looked at that toilet, it was a replica of an anatomy for the woman down there. So when I'm sitting there and I'm trying to squat, I see they had all left. But I didn't blame them. The men will never use it. They have the urinals. Yeah, the men have the urinals, so they go. So, and they are the innovators. But wow, the women asked, imagine, you have separated the toilet there, the woman is supposed to come and remove that bucket and use the urine to water her land, her farm. Some of these things are cultural barriers to our society. But is it really what that family needed? So we have to start innovations with the users in mind. Because in most of these innovations, actually we are not the users. We are the experimenters, what is working, what is not working. So why I brought that story of my mother, we are here still talking the same innovations that they were talking at that time. But after this, can we show the results of our innovations? Can we have data to tell us? Is our environment getting cleaner because of the many things that we are doing here? So that is how I would want to talk about that, Carol. And for my student girl, sometimes the market is giving the young girls what they think it's a solution. The reusable pads, in some areas they are very useful because that young girl can wash it, can clean it. There are kids who cannot even afford pads. Others are even exchanging pads for motorcycle rides to go to their areas. So it depends on what context you are looking at. Whatever context we are looking at is what we are supposed to talk with. That girl, she doesn't even have, she uses a mattress. So even a reusable pad that she can clean, it is more hygienic and more better than what she can afford. So that is what I would want to say. And because he told me to talk about the reusable pads, he has never even seen a pad, by the way. And that is why even now, the greatest garbage we are having is of sanitary pads that are fighting us in the wastewater treatment plant and the baby diapers which are being dumped. Imagine the amount of poop the diapers carry. But the men will never discuss them in the meeting because they don't know. They have never changed the diapers. But that is another form of fecal waste, hamisi. Not the one you carry with your exhauster. This one is carried by the Pampers. But it will find itself in the dumping site. So we need to bring everybody on the table to discuss these issues. And for the truth of the matter is, you can never discuss sanitation without men being there because they are the ones who carry the burdens. They are the ones who face everything that is supposed to economically, socially, and hygienically. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad that we have an MHM champion amongst us. So I think you have covered the two questions, and I think the next was for Dr. Makoha on, piloting the project in other counties. And then the last on last mile connectivity. Engineer, could you address that? So shortest time possible.
Thank you so much. I want to thank the person who asked this question. First, we are looking at knowledge diffusion. What we are saying is that if we can start with these 4 areas, and the way we have designed this program is to try and get value out of waste. For example, we want to see the youth take up sanitation as an enterprise, and even the women. We believe that if there is some money being made out of maybe preparing that waste by treating into agricultural use as fertilizer, then people will pick up. So we are doing it as a training platform in those 4 areas. And what we are doing, people who are trained will act as trainers of others. So in a way, as a strategy, it is going to scale itself up. But secondly, we're also carrying out studies to see how successful, and then we'll go back, because this is a program which is supported by the African Development Bank. Then we shall go back and see if we can still request for more funding to roll it over to the whole country. But thirdly, KU is already a national institution, so all the students participating in this come from almost the entire country. So therefore, it is also reaching you, Nyongesa, where you are from, so you'll find it in your place. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer.
Last mile connectivity. I think what we are doing as water service providers in our proposal development for water or sewerage project, we ensure there is last mile connectivity so that people can connect easily. I know where that question was coming from. Sometimes you develop a sewer network and you are just next to the sewer line and you are not connecting, you are using a septic tank. We are encouraging our water service providers to invoke the Public Health Act, which enforces anyone who is 50 meters to a sewer network to connect to the sewer network. And that's what we are doing together with our county governments using the public health officers.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Irene, 90 seconds.
Yes, very brief. Just to answer Caroline, on the issue of the underserved, the unserved, and women. In addition to what Margaret has said, I think it's also important to look at the issue of women as professionals. And thinking about the different water service providers, if we get the aggregate data and say how many women are working in water service providers, you will get a certain percentage. But I think the next step is to disaggregate that data. And in terms of gender, age, disability, etc. And then also to have intersections of that data and ask, these women you say are many, let's say this company, you'd even say this water service provider is pink, but where is it pink? Are those women at the decision-making table? And I think these are discussions that we have to make, even in terms of governance, because many companies pride themselves in having women, but where are these women? Is their voice heard? Yeah, and because the tendency sometimes is to look at the women as users, so it's time to also start looking at them as professionals and where we place them and whether they have a voice on the decision-making table. And then on the question of reusable sanitary towels, thanks for that. One of our panelists, Bathsheba, gave a very good session, and I think I can connect you after this for her to explain more about the product and how it works. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Annabelle, do you have any parting shots? Yes.
Yes, we do work in partnerships.
Closing remarks, your last remarks.
Oh, there was a question.
Oh, there was a question to you.
Can you ask it again? I was talking to her when you were asking the question.
He answered
it's already
it
taken up.
But
yes, but just one thing that I wanted to add on that is that I think really for the last mile connectivity to ensure, and especially in relation to finance, I think we can look beyond just loans for households and think about how households can work together with manufacturers of different maybe sanitation products and see if they can be able to have a working relationship, because it can be taken as, it can be loaned to the households. So I think for me that is also the other innovative idea, because then that way you probably may not be required to even pay interest, but you can be able to pay, just basically to pay back for the products that you have taken. So that's the way I would say in terms of going to scale. So I think as a closing remark, I think it is very important for us to know that when it comes to financing, everybody is needed. There is individual households, and this is why marketing is needed in the sanitation arena, so that people can understand the importance of sanitation, and probably households are more than willing to invest in very good kind of sanitation facilities. And then the other thing is that to understand that sanitation is a human right, and for us to be able to scale it up, will require resources even from the government. And as I said, I think it is very important for us to ensure that the subsidy will not be put on the periphery, but it is actually going to become part of the whole process of financing sanitation, even at the household level. So for me, it's just to say that finally, sanitation is very crucial, especially for women empowerment. And because many issues of gender have been spoken about, it's very important for us to make sure that women can have access to adequate sanitation, where, their privacy is guaranteed, hygiene is very critical, and you all know what it means to go to a facility that is not hygienic. So as we invest, I think it is very important for us to look at what kind of investments do they meet the needs of men and women and children as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of our panel discussion. Kindly let us appreciate the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Roslyn, and the panel for doing justice. Just have your seats. And at this point, we continue with our culture of awarding, gifting the panelists, and I want to call Patrick, who will be able to hand over this. Maybe around 10 minutes to bring our chief guest to speed on to what really came out from our group sessions that we had since yesterday, and to be able to do that very quickly, because also I understand our chief guest has quite a tight schedule. I'll want to invite Ken, who will coordinate that session very quickly so that we can get it back to our chief guest. Thank you.
P.S. Ngeno, thank you so much for being able to grace the occasion, because you're quite a man in sanitation, wash, not just hapo too, like you have been in the trenches. And you have left a very good example in Nakuru with Nakostek and what has gone on there. Everybody's been singing about Nakuru as a model, and we too, we do that. The next panel, I would like my panelists to come up. They're already here briefly, so just make your way. Your seats, you know where they were. This will take a different format, because I know it's evening. People have been here for 2 days. They all want to go. Some are coming from very far, and also our PS is pressed for time. So, where are you? So the format in which we shall take this one, remember, is strictly 10 minutes. I'll be very aggressive on timing this one. It is not a panel to discuss. You are just actually, all that you are presenting was already discussed. So don't go into intricacies. It is just to read your list of the outcomes that we have found. That should not make you start thinking, okay, why this was like this? No. just read your list and that is done. So I would like to, on behalf of, for the sake of the peers, again, you will have to introduce yourself just by name and very briefly, organization. The rest, I think, we shall do in another way, okay? So from the extreme end, yeah, you can start.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Damaris Ochanda. I'm a senior lecturer at Masinde Muliro, University of Science and Technology in Kakamega.
Thank you. My name is Priscilla Oluoch from Malindi Water, the good side of Malindi. I'm heading the sanitation services. For a long time, having been in the water sector, water service provision, but now having embraced the sanitation mandate, I'm heading the unit. Thank you.
My name is Charles Oyaya. I work for the International Development Institute Africa. Thank you.
And PS, you have to forgive us for this. I should have introduced myself, but I just knew you know me. We know each other, surely. My name is Kennedy Musumbo from the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, representing the ministry, and particularly Engineer Chengo, who is the head of the sanitation division of the ministry. So thank you so much. Can we have the outcome? You will introduce us the topic of the clusters that you are reading through the outcomes, and then go straight into it.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm supposed to give a summary, a report for the session on vulnerability, and also on gender and youth. So from those two discussions, when we talk about vulnerable groups, and particularly focusing on sanitation, we need to look at different categories. One, we have people with disabilities. Then two, we have children. And children are categorized differently. We have children, the preschoolers, and then we also have children in both primary and secondary schools. Then we also have children who are in institutions, for example, the orphanages, and in the correcting institutions. Under this category, we also looked at women and the youth, and also the street families. They also have sanitation needs. Now, with regard to all these groups, you'll realize that there's an issue of the group being unserved or underserved. So one of the key issues that we brought out from those discussions was the need for inclusivity for all the groups. When it comes to people with disabilities, it was agreed that the following should be addressed. And we start from very basic approaches. For example, if you go to toilets or washrooms that have provided a facility for people with disabilities, you'll find that the sign on that particular washroom is disabled. And disabled, basically, if you look at the definition of disabled, it means that facility is actually not working. It's not functional. So it was agreed that for such a facility, we need to sign them as accessible washrooms so that we improve the accessibility to this particular category. Then secondly, with regard to people with disabilities, there is need to conform with standards for built environment, which actually provides guidelines on how an accessible washroom should look like. It was also pointed out in that discussion that people with disability are more disadvantaged, particularly when it comes to informal areas. So that is an area that needs to be looked at also. We need to ensure dignified facilities and provide privacy. There's need to engage people with disabilities across the sanitation service chain, even from the point of conception of the project, design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. And we also need to engage them so that we can be able to understand their needs as we put up the sanitation facilities. It is important for all of us to collaborate, the people in the sanitation sector, so that we can be able to understand who is doing what with regard to these vulnerable groups. When it comes to children, it is important to note that the Ministry of Education understands the position of WASH in learning and has put in place various guidelines and strategies to ensure that WASH needs are actually addressed. There's a manual for WASH in schools, which also includes menstrual hygiene management. And at this point, when we are talking about the schools, we need to create sensitization to all the schools, to all the actors that are working with the schools, so that they know that we have manuals in place and we need to use them to be able to provide accessible sanitation services for these children. Again, the Ministry of Education has integrated hygiene in the curriculum. This is in reference to CBC, so that hygiene is taught from ECD all the way to senior school in different approaches. So this actually ensures that the children, as they grow up, they are able to conceptualize and appreciate the importance of WASH.
Okay, thank you, Chanda. I'll need to move on because of time.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will be only you who will present.
Okay, sorry. Let me stop there.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
From Malindi.
Yeah.
Remember, it's reading, not thinking so hard.
Thank
if
you.
you have written it, it's just to read it.
Thank you. I'll be reporting on 4 thematic areas. The first one being coordination, picking from what Dr. Damaris has said. There's need to have coordination. First of all, look at the government, government to government, interministerial coordination. Are the ministries speaking to one another, or how do we align the initiatives which are being done in different ministries? And when I look at also government, I'm looking at national and also county. Whatever is happening at the national level should be being replicated at the county level. There's need to map out all the actors in the sanitation space and the interventions. So then there's need to have collaboration and coordination between actors, the actors and the government, and also between actors and actors, so that we don't have duplication of efforts. There are quite a number of regulations, policies, research, innovation, and technological options that have already been thought out. They need to be looked at how they can be disseminated to the implementers on the ground. In the end, with good coordination, then we should be having systemic interventions that are impactful to the people that we wish to transform. The second thematic area is on community involvement. How are we conducting our public participation at all levels? You know, how are we doing community needs assessments, mapping of the community needs, working together with the community to list possible and sustainable solutions to challenges that they experience? What behaviors are there that we should start thinking about, so that as we are designing the behavior change approaches and models, we have the people in mind. In short, projects should be community specific and also enshrining gender mainstreaming and social inclusion in all the projects, so that we are speaking to everyone and the solutions and interventions we are having are inclusive. The other area I'll be reporting on is on formality versus informality. We all know the government has the role to play and to offer the formal services. However, we have the informal sector that has been in the sanitation space. How do we work towards transitioning from informal to the formal by empowering and capacity building the players who have been there and ensuring that they are playing to the regulations and complying to the rules and regulations to offer safe sanitation. So it's looking at how do we ensure that they understand how they should be able to play the business so that they are able to complement one another. The fourth area that I'm looking at is on how to balance private sector needs and government objectives. We all know that the government has a role to play, but the private sector has come out very strongly in these sessions that we had here, that they also have a role to play to complement what the government is doing to deliver on the sanitation agenda. And the government should be providing an enabling environment to the private sector to operate in. Good governance has come out very strongly as a motivator to the private sector to start looking at investing in the sanitation space. operationalizing of the PPP framework. How can we work together with the government? How can it support and incentivize the private sector so that they are able to, as they do the job, then the sanitation space is being looked at wholesomely. And also providing innovations to scale up sanitation. We've just had the discussion here of how MHM and solid waste can be taken care of as we are doing, for example, the pit emptying, a lot of this solid waste is in there. How can we work together for both government and private? And there's the component of reuse, that is waste to value component, and seeing fecal waste as a resource to build this sanitation economy. And I think there was a question yesterday, is sanitation bankable? Yes, because even in the morning we had reflections from Beverly, and I think even Annabelle has talked about that the sanitation space is a multi-million economy and worth 600 billion by 2030, because there's a number of uses for fecal waste, biogas, fertilizer, the black soldier fly as a source of animal protein, briquettes, and in the end also the carbon credit trading. So there's quite a number of areas that we can collaborate, both private and public, and ensure that the sanitation space is well covered. Thank you.
Asante sana Priscilla. Daktari, I will be very brutal on you, so outline.
Thank you.
But I'm not being brutal, it's just to handle today's session. All that has been found out will still be shared, and we will continue an engagement. So don't think, if I don't get it today, if I don't answer, I get my question through today, this is the end of the symposium. The symposium is the continuation, the beginning of a conversation through the various channels that we shall tell you at the end of the session.
Thank you, our moderator. I will report on 4 themes as we calibrate for the true north in fecal waste management. The first is oversight and regulation, and a couple of points for direction emerged. Some are cross-cutting, and my colleagues have made reference to them. One is on performance assessment framework and guidelines for effective regulation. 2 is self-regulation. 3, setting standards for products and services. 4, having more or less a one-stop shop for government approvals or licensing. 5, could we think of having a contextualized oversight mechanism that focuses on the entire sanitation value chain? And 6, compliance enforcement capacity. The second theme is on data reliability and reporting. And again, a couple of things that point to what we need to do emerged. Should we have a harmonized national performance indicators framework? 2, uniform or harmonized data collection tools. 3, data management and disaggregated data capture and reporting guidelines. 4, data quality management to ensure consistency and reliability of data. The participants did feel that with unreliable data, you cannot plan, track, and actually realize the results that are intended. Last but not least is custody of data, taking into account the legal matters of data protection and access to information. The third theme focused on performance assessment and sector accountability, and a number of things again have emerged. Number 1, should we have a harmonized monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning framework? It was pointed, for example, that we quite benchmark, but how much do we use that? Do we learn from them, even when we carry out assessments to see progress, and so on and so forth. Purposeful performance and rights-based reporting, that is people or customer-centered. 3, managing intersectionality in accountability processes across the service chain. Fecal sludge management and sanitation involves different players, regulators at almost every point. How do we manage that along the value chain? Number 4 is multi-level sector reporting within a coherent policy environment or framework. And 6, building capacity in evidence-based decision-making. And last but not least, social accountability and citizen involvement in decision-making. The 4th and the last theme was on investment. And broadly, financial gap or financing gap was identified, and a number of points of direction emerged. 1, what can we do to put a case on return on investment as far as sanitation and fecal sludge management is concerned? And that is a question of business and financial modeling. Number 2, can we develop a business case, particularly on the question of sanitation bankability? And that has also emerged as we have been discussing even the last panel that was here. Number 3 is the whole question of de-risking, and again that was mentioned, sanitation as a business and investment to make it attractive. Number 5, again the question, number 4, the question of innovative and sustainable financing. And when we talk about sanitation and innovative financing, it also relates to the question of ring fencing and fund holding for sanitation, so whatever is allocated is not diverted to other things other than what was intended. And last, gender and socially inclusive sanitation financing guidelines, taking into account the vulnerabilities and marginalization in the service space. Thank you very much.
Big claps for the panel. I assure you the pressure that these guys have been under. They had to sit down and outline all the summary for all the presentation. So we've gone a little bit overboard, but to samehe, peers. But I think you have a very good clue of what was going on in these 2 days. We weren't just having a nice party and exchanging gifts. I'm sure you have seen there was quite a lot of detail. I'm sure the rest of the details that are going to flesh all these outlines will be shared across the board once the end of this symposium is told what happens after this. I want to thank you so much for accepting to be under pressure. I'm sorry, I'm not able to take any questions, and I hope you understand. We don't want Waziri to leave us here on our own. We really want to hear from him. So, thank you.
Asante sana, and we are almost at the tail end, so I want to take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Irene, because it's always very important to acknowledge who was here and their efforts. Thank you.
I'll take exactly 3 minutes. I have the pleasurable duty of giving the vote of thanks, and I'll say all protocols observed. I would like to thank every one of you for being here, but I would like to make a special mention of one or two people. One is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Climate Change, Engineer Festus Ngeno. We are truly honored to have you here. Also, in absentia is the PS, Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Dr. Kiprono Rono. In absentia, we thank him. The Director of Sanitation in the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation, Engineer Chengo. To our sponsors, we are truly grateful to the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, to NEMA, to Water Fund, to APHRC, to Tana Water Works, to Kewasnet, WASPA, Wash Alliance, Fresh Life, Africa Renaissance, Washfin 2. We are truly grateful for everything you've done to make this symposium come to a reality. We are grateful to water service providers, the various companies that are here. Please receive our gratitude. We don't take you for granted. Our hosts and co-organizers of the symposium, Strathmore University, a special mention to the Vice Chancellor, Professor Vincent Ogutu, to the Water Governance and Innovation Hub and the staff there. We've had many people involved in the university, the security people, the housekeeping team. I think you recognize that the place is quite clean and orderly. The cafeteria under the School of Hospitality have done a great job. We are grateful to them. To our panelists and moderators, we cannot thank you enough. Thank you for stimulating discussions, and we will keep you posted, because in the next one we want you on board also, because you've done a great job. To the secretariat of this symposium, and then to the brain behind the symposium, Elizabeth Mwangi, who is also the project director of Wash Voice. I think she deserves a clap. She's worked very hard to make this come to reality. Our ushers are from the SDG Club of Strathmore University. Yeah, so they've done a great job also. Thank you. To the MC, he's been here since Monday, just making sure that everything is in line. And to all our service providers, if I have not mentioned you, it's not because we are not grateful, it's because of time constraints. And I want to leave you with these words from Maya Angelou. And she says, be present in all things and be grateful for all things. Yeah. And so it gives me unique pleasure at the moment to invite Mr. Anthony Ambugo, who will then invite the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Forestry, and Climate Change, Engineer Festus Ngeno, to give us his address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Irene Ngunjiri. PS, State Department of Environment and Climate Change, my longtime friend and buddy, Engineer Festus Ngeno, all protocols observed. Before I welcome the PS, I've requested to make an announcement. As the Association of Water and Sanitation Providers Association, in collaboration with the Ministry of Water and Sanitation and Irrigation, the Council of Governors, and the County Government of Mombasa, we have the pleasure to invite you to the Kenya Water and Sanitation International Conference and Exhibition 2023, which is scheduled to take place on 19th to 23rd of June 2023 at Sarova White Sands in Mombasa. So all of you are welcomed. And why we supported this symposium, it is a precursor, and the way it has been said, the discussions that have started here will be escalated to the conference. The overarching goal of the conference is to bring all stakeholders together to exchange practical knowledge, insights, and lessons into climate-smart technologies and innovations. When we were hit with the COVID pandemic in 2020, and if you look at the UN report in water, is that many countries in the world went off track in terms of realization of SDG 6. So we are thinking that taking advantage or harnessing technology and innovations is one of the solutions that will accelerate realization of water and sanitation within the required time. So I don't want to bore you, but what you can look at is, I can give you the URL, the Uniform Resource Locator. You can write it, www.kenyawatson.events. If you go in there, you will get the concept note, the conference brochure, all our advertisement for call for papers, where we have the 5 thematic areas, because climate change is one of the unprecedented challenges that has been alluded to in this conference. You realize that even from the fecal sludge, you have the greenhouse gases that are contributing to climate change. So all of you, on behalf of the organizers, are welcome to this conference. Now, without much ado, because everything has been stated, I want to take this opportunity to invite our PS. Let us be upstanding and clap as he comes. We can do it better. Weka manyunyu. Wachilia radi. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm back home, so it feels very weird to address you at this juncture. But I've just been invited to close the symposium, so that's what I've just come to exactly do. But before then is to just appreciate the organizers of the symposium. I missed, when I was coming in, if I start saying hi to everyone, I realize I have so many friends. The one we started working from when I was in Davis and Chatlev, I think I saw someone from Davis and Chatlev when I was a young engineer. I've seen my other guys, we work in the water sector, staff from Nakuru, in the sector here. By the way, just a privilege to be here this afternoon. The reason why we are chit-chatting with some of the colleagues here is that we've grown together in the sector. So I appreciate, I'm really humble to be here at this particular juncture. Buko, we were the MDs together in Kericho between 2011 to 2016. You left earlier than me. And the guy who mentored me in the sector is Nganga, to be here. And the first person who gave me a good lecture, it was a good lecture or a good conversation in the water sector was my friend Engineer Kakupia in Wasrep, the first day when I had just joined the sector. So it's a whole myriad of us. But I want to appreciate all of you, and I'm really humbled to be here at this particular time and honored to be invited. I am in contact with my PS colleague in charge of water and sanitation, Dr. Rono. He's aware I am here. And I have not come to talk about sanitation in that aspect of WASH, but from the aspect of environment. I want to still appreciate the team from Nakuru. The Nakuru team, I really appreciate you. You treated me kindly for the 5 years I was there. I miss you guys, and looking forward that you will continue doing the good work that you are supposed to do. So thank you so much, the colleagues in the sector. I know quite a number of you. I hadn't seen Kewasnet, I've seen the CEO there. So I can keep on mentioning everyone, Water Sector Trust Fund, whoever is here, Big 5 Africa, Oyaya, we did a county-wide sanitation strategy. which I still insist it has not been implemented, and this is important for me to mention, the way it was supposed to be implemented. I still challenge the guys in the water sector. Margaret, I see you are doing a good job. So the county-wide inclusive sanitation strategy, city-wide and county-wide, must be implemented the way we envisage, supported by the World Bank and the Ministry of Health and Ministry of Water. So just to inform you that I'm really humble. That I just came here because of friendship. I have a lot of friends. When a friend invites you, you can't say no. Let's not take these things seriously. No, that is how it is. So kindly, I'm here because I love you guys. So I'm really humble. So the leadership of sanitation and accountability, let me just do my remarks. And thanks the panelists, you've done a fantastic job. But before I read it, let me mention this in terms of the context. I'm in charge of environment and climate change in the Ministry of Water and Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry. I used to focus on Article 43D of the Act of Constitution COK 2010. My responsibility now is looking at Article 42, which envisages the right to health and clean environment, and exposes also to Article 69 and Article 70. When you look at the environment, we need to look at it from a holistic point of view. So I'm really, it was a good grounding for me as we were looking at the inclusive sanitation, because part of environmental or making the environment clean is looking at the sanitation agenda. So environment and sanitation are one and the same thing. For you to have a clean environment, you must have good sanitation. And that is why, and for the guys in the water sector, you will find that the role of National Environment Management Authority is to ensure that we enforce all the laws and regulations that are all related to environmental management. So my role as a PS in charge of environment climate change is to make sure that every Kenyan has or lives in a clean and health environment, and that includes sanitation. So it is important that we look at it from that aspect. So as we look at the various sanitation aspects, so value chain, whether from water, fecal sludge management, urban planning is a great conversation that we need to have. I need to mention that we are working on a huge program, which I presume every water service providers, especially the 4 counties that are part and parcel of the Nairobi rivers or Athi Basin. And it is important that we, as we look at the multi-sectoral approach in terms of Nairobi rivers cleaning program or strategy on how to restore Nairobi rivers, the Ministry of Water and Sanitation, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Ministry of Housing, Urban Planning, and Devolution are working very, very closely to make sure that that is delivered. That is how we want to look at that in a multi-sectoral approach. So the role of WRA, role of service providers within the basin, role of other agencies, Tana Water, Athi Water, and also the other regional agencies will be part and parcel of this exercise. And therefore, it gives me great pleasure, an honor for me to be invited to speak at the Sanitation Accountability Conference, SANAC 2023. And as I indicated, sanitation is a topic that is very, very close to my heart. We did a lot when we were on the other side. And I'm happy that the same conversation is still ongoing. I still want to inform this gathering as I still check and monitor what's happening with Nakostek, especially Nakuru. So my Nakuru colleagues say they are under radar from where I sit. Poor sanitation continues to pose major health, environmental, and socio-economic risks to many people across the world. Sanitation as economic, and the government of Kenya recognizes that improving fecal sludge management is fundamental to tackling the global sanitation crisis and achieve the SDG goal number 6 and water and sanitation for all by 2030. SDG goal number 13 is important, the effect of climate change in our provision. So that is part of the conversation that we are looking at as we look at the environment. That the Sanitation Accountability Conference has addressed the sanitation experience lived by all of us in Kenya. While management of waste may be singular responsibility of individuals, the effect to the environment is universal through multiple pathways. I have had the conversations here on carbon credit. The water sector is taking lead. You are aware that we are amending Climate Change Act 2016 to incorporate the legal and the policy framework on carbon markets. We've never had us as a country, so it will be a very good space for you to be able to manage your carbon credits. As we look at that, the issues of emissions from methane gas in our fecal sludge or our sewerage systems has an effect on environmental degradation, especially the depletion of ozone layer. So we need to be able to manage that. And therefore, that's how climate change affects our processes. If the poor in the neighborhood lack facilities, like the fecal waste, it will always get into the rich, especially through other ways in the kitchen, vegetables and fruit that we buy in the streets. And therefore, sanitation and environment cannot be disintegrated from each other. Poor management of fecal waste result into air, water, and land pollution. And therefore, it is important for us to be able to look at sanitation from a holistic perspective for us to be able to mitigate against the effects. Methane gas, for example, related environmental effects such as smell, pollute air, and I think quite a number of colleagues have spoken about this. Nitrification of water bodies and growth of water vegetation in water bodies and pollution of groundwater due to poor containment is also a big risk. Poor fecal sludge or waste management derails achievement of most of the SDGs, and especially on health, climate, livable cities, poverty, education, life underwater, that's aquatic, and on land, among others. While safe and innovative management will support almost all the SDGs, including the energy, resilient economies, food security, and livable cities, the actors' coordination and multisectoral discussions, which were at the center of the symposium, has a direct impact on informing interventions that will promote better sanitation. And therefore, I want to challenge that as we look at sanitation, as from the water and sanitation sector, we look at it holistically. I still insist that from the environmental perspective, that urban planning, the guys in the health sector, the guys in the housing sector, the guys in the all facades in schools should be part and parcel of the discussion when it comes to the decisions, especially when you look at the designs and how to manage the effects of fecal sludge. Ladies and gentlemen, failure to comprehensively address the gaps in supervision and coordination along sanitation value chains, as indicated before, has a detrimental effect or impact on environment than any other area. For example, if a containment does not address the soil and climatic conditions and variations, groundwater is negatively impacted. And you know what it means. You run utilities for the MDs or WSPs who are here. When you have highly polluted water, then you have high treatment costs, and the costs keep on escalating as it were. And therefore, it is all of us to be able to maintain and conserve the environment. And that is why one of the key things even in our programming on mitigating climate change issues is our strategy on the 15 billion tree growing, which is important for nutrition and bringing in the aspects of how we can be able to conserve water and the catchments, as it were. When emptying and transportation is not properly coordinated, the spill on the physical environment and the particle in the air effect on the environment is enormous. Lack of services for safe disposal, well-coordinated fecal sludge, waste disposal results to heaps of waste, and finally the reuse product like the biogas or the briquettes, as it has been mentioned, or fertilizer for issues of soil conditioning, are not to the quality that is required, and that the future of our environment is highly compromised. There is need, therefore, to enhance waste management and sanitation services delivery, post investment, put in place clear policies, efficient management framework, and structures to implement safe management of fecal waste. However, this again needs to be looked at it from a holistic perspective. Clear coordination framework to ensure that all actors along sanitation value chain work in tandem and understand each other's needs and responsibility is very critical in this aspect. And that the symposium has provided a space where all the players can speak to each other and create a pace of working with each other. I have keenly listened to the various resolutions from the symposium, looking forward to receiving the white paper and looking at how we can be able to implement the resolution, especially going forward. Ladies and gentlemen, providing working fecal waste management systems for current generation not only meets the needs of the individual or community, but also for the future generations, environment, and various economies. Focusing, for example, effect of algae and hyacinth in water sources, e.g. in Lake Victoria, which result in poor fecal management, you get an idea of the long-term effect of poor fecal waste management. With SDG number 6.2, greatly, of course, only 7 years ago, 7 years to 2030, compounded by climate change issues, urbanization, and technology, all having an impact on the development of sanitation, critical engagement and stakeholders coordination are critical than ever before. And therefore, I urge all of you to have a very, very coordinated, and I think the conversations that we have had here makes a lot of sense in how we can be able to move to the next agenda. Of course, we've always mentioned that we lag behind in our sanitation programming in terms of connectivity, in terms of provision, access to sanitation, whether conventional, on-site, and so forth. But even as we look at this, a coordination framework needs to be employed for us to be able to move to the next level. And of course, building resilience, especially in communities or, the first speaker was talking about the access to the poor or the vulnerable communities. That needs to be a critical aspect. For us, on the climate change aspect, we look at either you are mitigating or adapting. So how do you provide adaptation mechanism for them to be able to get services, which are a right in the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The organizers of the symposium will produce a white paper of what, of course, has been discussed. And I presume that the white paper will give a base data on where to start in fecal waste management to protect the environment. As we advance the conversation on fecal waste and environment, let us together take it upon ourselves to work with each other and to constantly engage to achieve the safe universal sanitation and turn fecal waste to safe and useful resource for all of us. As I conclude, we all need to recognize a clear need to move away from fecal waste management as a private service and holistically address it with universal concern on its effect on the environment. It is impacts on dignity, not only to the individual, but also in the environment space, and realize when one person lacks sanitation, we all lack it because it is interconnectivity through environment. I believe that as we close this symposium, we have had an opportunity to clearly calibrate the true north in fecal waste management, and I want to really congratulate the organizers of the symposium and looking forward to the white paper as indicated. As I finalize, to mention that I think we've discussed it with WASPA. I will be participating in the upcoming WASPA conference. I think I've been given a slot. I will be speaking on effects of climate change on provision of water and sanitation services, which is important for me to be there. So I'm just, not that WASPA have hired me to speak on their behalf, but I'm just informing you, you will be seeing me soon in the conference. Secondly is to, while that this platform is to encourage us. You know, climate change is real. We are facing a threat like never before. You know, the pendulum in terms of drought, then we have now a huge rainfall, flooding. We did issue the other day. The Kenya Meteorological Services issued an alert in terms of how much rainfall we are going to experience the next few days. But we need to be able to be alive to the fact that we need to be able to tap and use the available resources or water that are to indicate. Again, we take advantage of this season. We are working on a restoration program as a country. You are aware about the 15 billion growing strategy, tree growing strategy. And I want to implore all of us that everyone to take his own share. It is a presidential directive, and it is my duty to make sure that that happens, especially to my friends. Otherwise, the friendship is going to end. And my friends will not be able to support us. We have a big ambition to do the 5 billion in the next 5 years and the 10 billion in the next set of the 5 years. And it only requires that you only grow 30 trees for you for the 10 years that we have here for us to get the 15 billion. So it's a very easy challenge. But I want to congratulate the WSPs. I know you have a huge initiative as WSPs, as WASPA, that every utility does this. So individually also within your homes, it is important. And again, this is where the conversation on carbon credits comes. If you have a farm, 0.5 acres of land, with full of trees, you will be entitled. When the laws come up, we are doing public participation on the amendments now, you will be entitled to carbon credits. For the small-scale farmers, even at home in the village, we are looking at the issues of tree growing, fruit trees, and for us, the riparian, and especially for county governments, the riverine strategy, which we are going to launch in the next few weeks, and also the wetland strategy, which is a big opportunity for us. For the ASALs, we are coming there in terms of how we can be able to meet the 15 billion. We need to move our forest cover or the tree cover from 12.8% to 30% by 2032. And therefore, that's a big challenge for us. With these remarks and those so many words, I wish to declare the Sanitation Accountability Conference, SANAC, 2023 officially closed. Thank you so much.
Bwana PS, we'll request you remain there. We have some gift for you. And your mentor is the one honored to present that. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a very powerful picture, you know, the mentor and the mentee in the same photo. Thank you so much, and we do appreciate that one. So it's officially closed, and we have tea at our usual place. Yes, we have tea at our usual place. We have the tents right behind here, so karibuni for the cup of tea, and also Bwana PS, if also you have time, you can also join us for that tea. Thank you. It has been my pleasure. Asanteni sana. God bless you. Thank you.